It's the first house I've ever bought. Many of my friends consider it a great achievement for someone in their late 20s, but I suspect it'll be the last house I ever buy. There was something not right about it. I should have trusted my gut when I saw that strange little space in the basement. It wasn't big enough to be considered a room. It was the wrong height to be a closet of any kind. Perhaps it held some sort of heating unit from the past. The house was mostly new. I say mostly because it was built over the foundation of an older house, so that strange space was probably part of the other building. Despite it being empty, it felt oddly full. Standing close to it made me feel how I imagine a small dog might feel, picking up the territory marked by a wolf. But the price was good, so I ignored my instincts. The agent told me the owner had suddenly received a new job opportunity across town and did not want to spend 3 hours driving to and fro from work every day. They were looking to sell fast, and if I could get past the minor fix-ups the property required, this was a steal. It was in an up-and-coming property area with several schools and shopping malls planned to be built within a 15-minute drive. How could I pass up the opportunity? I told myself that I could probably just seal up the creepy basement as I got my finances together. Part of me knew that I was never going to get around to that. Most likely I'd just sit up here and never enter the basement. I've survived here for a year and 6 months, 12 days, and I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. No, I can't just leave. One of them appears to have attached itself to me, and I'm scared that if I move, it'll follow me. Then I'll have to set up a new routine to keep it at bay. Failing that, well, I have no idea what it does when it catches up. I have no intention of finding out. Yes, I'll admit I have one of those personality types where I leave things until the last minute. But I have made it this far in life, so leave me alone, okay? It began, as many things do, with knocking in the walls. I thought it was just creaks of wood in the house settling. What else could it be, right? That was until my friend came over to stay one night. I'm an introvert, so holding a house party was an unattractive prospect, but my extrovert adopter, Vivian, had been very excited for my first house purchase, and having disappointed her regarding the lack of a house party, I made her the consolation prize of being my first guest to sleep over. I'd only stayed in the house for a couple of weeks. A lot of things were still in boxes, and I had not shopped for much furniture. After a simple dinner, we made ourselves cozy with sleeping bags, nachos, soft drinks, and my brand new television. We were in the middle of a good conversation when the knocking came. V sat up, with her eyes scanning the ceiling as if looking for the source. I stared at her quizzically, but suddenly she asked aloud, "Is anyone there?" We stayed silent, just as I was about to say something. Several knocks sounded. V broke into a half grin. "What are you doing?" I asked her. "Didn't you notice? That rapping sound," she said, eyes still scanning the ceiling. "Yeah, I've heard it since I moved in, just the house settling." "Sounds like it's been trying to participate in our conversation," V put in. I hadn't noticed the knocking when we were talking for the last 3 hours, but then the odd knocks had become somewhat background noise to me. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and the hair on the back of my neck was standing up. I did not do well with spooky things. The last horror movie I'd watched had kept me awake for 3 weeks, and I swore to never do that again. Can we maybe not test this?" I squeaked, but I could see that V had that look in her eye, and I'd never successfully dissuaded her from doing anything. "1 knock for yes, 2 for no," she persisted, calling out loudly to the ceiling. Then, leaning over to me, completely ignorant of my wide-eyed discomfort, she whispered, "I watched this in a documentary once. A family communicated with a spirit in their house this way." What happened to the family?" I asked, not sure if I wanted to know. A sharp rap from the ceiling was my reply. No, I announced, standing up. "We are leaving this instant." I was preparing to get into a pair of jeans, grab my keys, and go somewhere, anywhere but here. Late hour be damned. V snorted and laughed at me. Don't be silly. Okay. We don't have to continue. You haven't had any bad experiences here for the past couple of weeks, right? No, I said, relieved she was going to stop whatever the heck was going on. It was true. I hadn't actually gotten the creeps or had any nightmares since moving in. Then it's just some creaking, right? Even if it is something, she said, and I winced at the thought. It seems like it's friendly. Okay, but any further knocking or seeking of responses, and we're going to stay over at your place for the night. She smiled and placed a hand on my arm. We had one of those platonic relationships, always on the verge of turning into something more, but never doing so, as other things always got in the way. We spent the remainder of the night watching videos on the internet while trying not to doze off on the floor in our sleeping bags. We finally lost the fight around 2 in the morning. There were no more knocks that night. I woke up the next day from the sunlight pouring into the room. I rolled over, wondering what time it was and realizing that V was not in her sleeping bag. I listened out for water running in the bathroom or the shower, but I didn't hear anything. No sounds from the kitchen either. Puzzled, I fumbled for my glasses and dragged myself to my feet. I found her outside, still in her pajamas, sitting on the porch swing. She had her chin in her hands, staring at the grass by the pavement. She had her car keys, phone, and purse by her side. Hey, what's going on? She turned and gave me a small smile, then asked if we could go grab brunch somewhere. I replied sure and went back in and did a quick change. Just before I got out, she poked her head in the door and asked if I could grab the rest of her stuff. Although I felt a bit off about the abrupt end to her stay, I didn't question her. Grabbing her day clothes and toiletry bag, I headed out. We drove in her pajamas over to her place, some 20 minutes away. Then she went in to change. I waited for her in the car. We hadn't said much to each other on the drive over. I knew when she was ready, she'd tell me what was going on. We went to a nearby cafe, one of our regular haunts. As we settled down to our meal, she finally confessed she'd gone and communicated further with the knocking early this morning while I slept. I gave a deep groan and put my head in my hands. I was annoyed, but I could rarely remain angry with Vivian. V, of all the things. Why? I live there alone, and I spook easy. I'm sorry, I'd totally forgotten about it by this morning, but right as I finished brushing my teeth and stepped out into the corridor, I heard the tapping. Okay, are you sure I want to hear this? I kind of need you to hear this. I sat up, hearing the askance for help in my friend's voice. Go on then, I sighed. Look, in the documentary I watched, it was about 3 girls in the 1800s or something who claimed that their house was haunted by a spirit who let them predict the future. The spirit would communicate via knocks, 1 for yes, 2 for no. They turned the whole thing into a fortune-telling business. Some say they were eventually outed, with people discovering hidden devices under the kitchen table where they held their seances to create the rapping noises. Of course, others still believe it's a true story. She shifted nervously. So I thought I'd ask if the knocking knew the future. As easily as I spooked, I raised an eyebrow incredulously. You're joking, right? It didn't actually predict something. Did it? Well, I mean, not exactly. Not right away, she said, her arms folded as she stared at the floor. I asked if it could tell me the future. It answered yes. I didn't ask about the future to test it at first. I started by asking how many boyfriends I've had. It answered 6, by knocking that many times. But you've had 5. Well, technically, I've had 6. I just never counted the first one as a real boyfriend. Okay, creepy, but not beyond coincidence. Well, then I asked about my street number. It rapped 3 times, 4 times, then 7 times. And I guess that is correct. I'm in Unit 3, number 47. So I was convinced. She fell quiet. Then what? Then I asked when I would die. You what? She sighed. Look, I just thought it wouldn't be that serious a question to ask. Which part of knowing when you were going to die isn't that serious? I cried in apoplexy. I closed my eyes and took a very deep breath. Okay, I get it. It was surreal. This sort of thing doesn't usually happen. You got caught up in the moment, as if this were one of those internet sites where it would tell you your death date. Then what happened? She looked like she was about to cry. Well, it didn't answer at first, so I thought I was being clever. I asked how many decades I had left. No response. So I asked how many years. Still no response. Months? Nothing. Weeks? Nothing. Then I asked how many days I had left. I held my breath. 4, she said. Like I said, I spook pretty easily, and obviously, I have a soft spot for V. Inclinations for trying to communicate recklessly with the supernatural notwithstanding. So, we made a plan. The few people I had told this to had laughed, but it was what really happened. We asked ourselves how we could avoid as many horror movie tropes as possible. First things first, I decided I wasn't going to stay at my house for the next few days. Instead, I would stay with V for the whole week. I worked from home, so there was no big deal where I was staying, as long as I had my laptop. Secondly, we got into a bit of a debate about exactly what 4 days meant. Was that morning day 1, or was it day 0? Were we counting in hours from the time V asked the question? Just to accommodate for all timing constituents, we decided that days 3, 4, and 5 we would be strictly in V's unit. We would stock up on groceries and supplies and order food if we had to. V was still at university, so she'd miss a lab class, but could get all her lectures and assignments online. Thirdly, on day 4, the most likely day of the prediction, we would invite as many friends over as possible for dinner and board games. Really push the vibe as far away from spooky as possible. Also, we would have the safety of company and numbers. We figured if she was going to die from something medical and sudden, then maybe there was nothing we could do to prevent it, but we would reduce the chances of anything supernatural as much as possible by doing this. We were probably drawing inspiration from too many horror movies, but it didn't feel silly at the time. We went back to my house later that day. V wouldn't enter the house, but I steeled myself to grab whatever I needed as fast as I could. I did hear the creaking a couple of times. Really gave me a chill when I heard the sudden snap overhead in the bathroom. But I kept telling myself I didn't have to respond to it. If I didn't respond to it, then it would leave me to do my thing as it had all this time. Also, this was ridiculous, and surely V's experiments was coincidental at best. We had quite an unremarkable week, all things considered. As the 4th day came and went, V was still alive. I kept her within view most of the day. We spent the evening in the midst of board games and good company, so we barely noticed when the clock passed midnight. Nothing even remotely dangerous or creepy occurred. Then the 5th day passed without incident, and we allowed ourselves to giggle nervously at how we had believed in this kind of thing. She was even beginning to act tough again, but I know that she'd believed things enough to call her mom, who was a serious issue, during the week, just in case. By the 6th day, Saturday, I decided I should head back. I could not stay at her apartment forever, and we were both beginning to need our space. But I'll admit it, I was still spooked. It was evening when I arrived home. I was about to prepare dinner when I heard a rap. Something in me roused, an emotion akin to anger. Assertiveness? I'd spent an entire week fearful and dedicated to a crazy notion that the knocking sound might have been a real supernatural thing. I was tired in a way, and aside from seriously considering selling the house I had just moved into because of an occasional creak, I decided I was just going to have to get over myself and prove that it was all rubbish. "Hello?" I said. My voice did not sound as brave as I wanted it to. There was no response. Was that you?" It was a very loud creak that made me jump. "Okay," I gasped, trying to gain control of my breathing. I could feel the blood drain out of my face. If you're real, let's make a deal." A knock. "I don't even want to see what you are. I never want to get any sense of your presence, aside from the knocking. In return, I won't do anything about you. Is that possible?" Even today, I can hardly believe I was able to muster that. And yes, I realized that my proposal was not really a sensible trade of any kind. But I doubt many would have done better in such a situation. A single knock. It agreed. "Okay, cool." Then I took a deep breath, not believing this was actually communicating with me. The last thing I want to ask you, why'd you tell my friend she was going to die in 4 days?" 4 sharp raps, followed by several long scratches. It felt like it was laughing. The prolonged sound made me seize up, and I fought the instinct to just get the hell out of the house and drive to my parents. You were joking?" A knock. All right. No more jokes, okay? This is really all I can handle." Silence. It remained silent for the rest of the evening. I can't believe I have ever been so scared and so brave in my life that weekend. I went about life, shutting every open door to empty rooms, turning on every single light, and having a lot of music on to change the mood. But I'd play the music only on speakers and not earphones, because I wanted to hear if anything was coming. There were creaks now and then, but they could truly have been the house settling. Or perhaps just my housemate, minding its own business. I never told anyone, but I did give the presence a nickname. I called it Knox, and it would turn out to be the friendliest of the 5 entities that presented itself in my house. I haven't even told you about my experience in the basement space yet, but I'm sure I will. I've been living in this house for about a year and a half. This happened about the 3rd month of living there. At the time, I considered my house mildly haunted. First, there's the poltergeist. I call him Knox. It's okay as long as you don't ask it any questions. It likes to answer on occasions, and the answers aren't always nice. At the start of things, all Knox would do is, well, knock. Once I acknowledged fully that Knox was an actual presence, it's not just the house settling, I started to notice it really liked to give its opinion on things. For that reason, I no longer listen to the radio, podcasts, or videos on speaker, only earphones. I suspect others, far braver than I, would be tempted to get better acquainted with Knox. I consider that an extremely rash notion. I don't know what Knox actually is, and what it can do. What if it's some weird eldritch being, living in the walls, that would drive people insane if they were ever to reveal itself? Being cordial with it is as far as I'm willing to go. In that regard, the other rule with Knox is that if it doesn't want you to be somewhere, it'll tap sharply twice. 1 for yes, 2 for no, is the clearest communication we've established between us. If I hear 2 knocks when entering a room, I just quietly leave and come back later. I've never challenged Knox about it, and I'm not finding out what's happening if I do. After a while, though, I started to notice that Knox would also move things. Plates and cups, mostly. Sometimes a cup of water. Once a cup of milk I'd left unfinished would be empty in the morning. More disturbingly, if I left food out, bread in particular, I would notice small but obvious bites taken out of it. Not mouse bites from the clearly human teeth indentations. I guess that was my motivation to keep the house clean. And in this fashion, Knox and I had gone on about our existence. Then there's the basement. I almost didn't buy the house because of the basement. There's a strange, creepy space in there, jutting into one of the walls. It's only a couple of feet deep, about chest height, and 4 feet across. It also has a yellow-painted scaffolding in it, crisscrossing it at diagonals, so it's just about impossible to store anything in it. I don't know what it's used for, but it has a presence about it. You just know you're not supposed to be in there, or even near it. I've decided not to store anything in the basement because of that. There's the house's water heating unit down there, and some leftover junk from the previous owner. Old wooden tables and chairs. I don't go there, unless it's absolutely necessary. On the handful of occasions I've had to be down there, it was only during the day. And even then, I follow the rules that as children we intuitively know when crossing dark spaces. You don't make any loud sounds or unnecessary noise, lest you annoy it or draw its attention. You don't run or rush what you're doing, lest you make it think you're afraid of or aware of it. But neither do you tarry and test its patience. And when you're done, you turn off the light and you do not look back. Here's what you need to know before I tell you the rest of the story. I'm scared of the dark. I have always been scared of the dark, since I was young. I'm not sure why. Since I've moved out by myself, learning to deal with the dark has been quite an adjustment. In those early months living here, between Knox and my nyctophobia, I'd taken to the habit of remaining in my room at night. I do all the dishes, set everything up for the next day, turn off all the lights downstairs while there's still light, then I take my provisions for the night up to my room. Snacks, drinks, instant noodles, etc. My bedroom has an attached bathroom, so there's no need to leave during the night. I even have a mini fridge in my room and a kettle. Once the bedroom door is closed, I was in my little sanctuary of pajamas, computer games, and chill hip-hop music. And my Kindle reader, of course. Knox even appeared to have the etiquette not to disturb me while I was in there. Downstairs, night would slowly fill the house and would remain still and calm till dawn. Save for the very rare need for me to creep down to grab something quickly, the elements of the house were pretty well left in harmony. I left it alone, and it left me alone. That was until my brother and his family decided to visit. I'm not close with my brother. We both tried our best to bond, I believe that, but we're just different people. That aside, I welcomed his daughter, his wife, and him happily into my new house. They plan to stay a couple of nights over the weekend. There's only one other bedroom besides mine just down the landing. Not big, but they made do. My brother and his wife would sleep in the bed, and I had a mattress for their 5-year-old daughter, Ava. Ava was a quiet child, shy, polite, and obedient. She spent most of her time in the house reading her books, scribbling her art, and watching videos on her tablet. It was about 7:30, just after delivery dinner, when Ava approached me. "Uncle, who's the little girl that lives here?" If you haven't gathered, I spook easily, and this was classic spooky. My first thought was whether Knox had revealed itself to her. It's not the first time Knox has messed around with a house guest. But, not wanting to alarm Ava, I responded with a reassuring smile. "What little girl?" "The one standing by the door of the kitchen," she said, looking towards the aforementioned kitchen. "I don't like how she looks at me. She's scary." Ava nodded in a whisper. I swallowed and felt it get stuck in my throat. Is she still there?" Ava shook her head. I walked over to the kitchen as casually as I could and took a look at the door there. It led to the basement, and it was always shut. I did not open it, instead going over to the little key rack that hung beside the sliding glass door out back. On the rack was an old-fashioned, slightly rusty key. This was the basement door key. Grabbing it, I turned smartly and locked the door with a loud clunk. I tested the handle firmly, and the door didn't budge. I went back to Ava. "There, it's locked now. Nothing's coming out of the basement." That seemed to satisfy her, and she went off to find her mother. I did think I should have told my brother and his wife, but for one reason or another, I just never brought it up in conversation. They all went to bed early that night, and I retreated into my room. I noticed before falling asleep that despite the lack of wind, the house was creaking a fair bit. On reflection, I think Knox was trying to tell me something. I was woken up by a sharp rack on my door. I came out to find my brother looking flustered. Ava was missing. My brother had roused and found her gone from the mattress. The guest bedroom door was wide open, so he thought she must have gone to the bathroom. When she didn't come back after a couple of minutes, he went to check. She wasn't in the toilet. That's when he'd woken up his wife. They'd been searching for a while before he decided to wake me up as well. I joined them in their search immediately, and we flipped on every light in every room and called for Ava. We looked into every cupboard, behind every curtain, and under all the furniture that she might fit under. Finally, my brother headed into the backyard to see if his daughter was there. It was the only door to the outside that Ava could possibly have unlocked. His wife was fervently going towards all the rooms again. To the worried feeling I had in my guts was added a sense of cold dread. I knew where Ava had gone. I glanced over to the key rack. The basement key was missing. I was certain I'd placed it back. I tested the handle to the door and found it unlocked. Swinging the door open, I was greeted by a pitch-black darkness that seemed to flow out and chill me to the bone. 2 sharp raps sounded overhead. 2 for no. I looked up a little bit surprised that Knox would care for my well-being. Or was it also scared of the basement? But my 5-year-old niece was down there, and scared as I was, I had to go down. I considered for a fleeting moment to call my brother and sister-in-law to join me, but that just didn't feel right. It was one of those rules I just knew had to be followed. Don't show it that you're scared. Don't reveal you even know it's there. Maybe that's why they always split up in horror movies. Just rules we all know, but never tell each other. I flicked the switch on to the basement. No light came on. The bulb must have gone out. Fish sticks. Ava, I called out, catching the faintest sound of movement below me. I turned on my phone flashlight and carefully descended down the flight of stairs. The last thing we needed was for me to fumble down the stairs and break a leg. I scanned the basement with the light, and the legs of the old furniture gleamed back at me, while casting shadows that spelt profane things across the wall. It was getting cold down here. My breath was misty, and the bare flesh on my arms prickled. I didn't waste time looking under the tables and chairs. I went straight for the strange space. Sure enough, there past the old diagonal scaffolding was a bundle of dark hair and pajamas. She looked to be a lot further in than the 2 feet deep I knew the space to be. "Ava," I whispered. She sniffed and turned her head to look at me, tear-stained and wide-eyed. "Come out, Ava. It's okay, I'm here." She shook her head at me, not budging. I took a deep breath, then reached in between the scaffolding. Despite having to contort myself between the bars, I was able to grab Ava under the arms and gently gather her to me. She broke out in a loud sob as she clutched at my shirt and buried her head into my shoulder. The cold suddenly flipped into suffocating heat. I felt sick from under the change in temperature. I still was guided only by the light of my phone, and I headed for the stairs. Was it dark? I felt my visibility was poorer than before. The stack of upside-down furniture, though being no more than a few feet in length, suddenly felt like a corridor stretching away. I swatted my hand holding the phone as I tried to push back the darkness. The flare of my light did little to the mad dance, throwing shadows in all directions, but I didn't stare too hard at the shapes in the dark. I didn't want to make out the silhouette of a little girl. Instead, I focused all my effort into pushing past that pile of furniture, stumbling up the stairs and bursting into the orange light of the kitchen. I collapsed to my knees, still holding Ava, and was panting like I'd run a marathon. My sister-in-law saw us, gasped, and immediately ran over. She was weeping in relief. My brother came in from the backyard then, As I released Ava to her parents, I caught something from her little fist, the basement door key. "Why did you go down there, baby?" my sister-in-law asked. Ava wasn't able to answer as she wailed. I didn't blame her. I was just about to wail myself. "You're bleeding," I heard my brother say. He pointed at my leg, and I looked down and saw a bright red stain slowly spreading across my trouser leg. I gingerly pulled it back, peeling away my skin to reveal several long scratches across the back of my leg, like something had tried to grab my heel. "Must have scraped something down there," I mumbled. Now that I was aware of them and the adrenaline was petering out, the wound was really beginning to sting. My brother said something about having the scratches checked out in case of tetanus or something. Then he and his wife turned their attention to their inconsolable daughter and headed back to their room, leaving me alone with the gaping black of the basement door. I could feel menace radiating from the darkness, very cautious to make no sudden moves as though the door were the open maw of an alligator. I slowly swung the door shut. Even shut, I could feel the hatred beating against it from the other side. I placed the key into the keyhole and locked it, then allowed myself to breathe once again. 2 sharp raps sounded overhead. Yeah, I know, Knox. It wasn't over. My brother and family decided in the morning not to stay in the house. They hadn't been able to get much out of Ava, but they definitely got the picture she did not want to be back in my house. I felt exactly the same way. They packed up and made ready to leave. Ava came up to me to get a cuddle goodbye. I knelt down to her level and she gave me a knowing look. "Was it the little girl?" I asked. "She said I had to, or she'd eat my mom and dad," Ava said with a nod. I think my mind went blank after that. I don't remember saying goodbye to my brother and his wife. I don't remember the car leaving. I just remember standing in the driveway, facing my house, and wondering whether I should go in or not. My leg was beginning to ache from the gashes on it. I hadn't done much other than to dab it with a tissue to make the bleeding stop. They were deeper than I thought, and they had a ragged quality to them. Finally, I decided I'd find a clinic open on Saturday and have it bandaged properly while I considered what to do. I passed by the basement door to get ready. In the morning light, that hateful aura was missing from the door. Well, that was a relief at least. When I saw the doctor, he asked me if I'd been attacked. I laughed sheepishly and said it was some furniture in the corner. He raised an eyebrow at me quizzically, then silently raised a hand, made it into a claw, and gently drew it across the bandage where the cut had been. Those cuts certainly weren't made by furniture in the corner, not even by an animal's claw. They'd been made by a hand. "Are you sure you're safe? Do you need any help?" the doctor asked kindly. I was sure I was not safe, and I was very sure I needed help, but I shook my head. What could I say? I had been abused by a demonic entity in my basement, getting nothing else out of me. The doctor resigned to put accident down on the cause of injury. It had been a long wait to see the doctor, so it was well after lunch when I left the clinic. I sat down at a fast food outlet, still unsure of what to do when my brother called me. He told me they had relocated to a hotel somewhere in the city, and I was welcome to join them for dinner. I said sure. Heck, it was my treat after a bad night, I said. He chuckled softly and said dealing with night terrors was all part of being a parent. Then he also said they realized that they were missing a milk bottle. They think Ava had been holding a milk bottle when she went down to the basement, as she usually fell asleep with one. I told my brother I'd look, even though I wasn't going to step foot in that basement for $1 million. I have a problem saying no, though. I sat down the phone and thought about the basement with the milk bottle lying in that odd, ominous space, collecting dust. That's when it hit me. The milk. The cups of liquid that were finished by morning. The nibbles of bread I left out. What if it hadn't been Knox? What if the thing in the basement wandered out at night and ate things? I squirmed at the thought, but I remembered once having visited some old cottages while on tour in the UK. The guide had pointed out a metal saucer of milk and some biscuits, artfully sat across a large flat rock close to the cottage entrance. Apparently it was a centuries-old tradition from the homeowner to leave milk and biscuits out for the fae that wandered through and around the house in the witching hours. He also pointed to a corner of the building where the angle had been beveled away. He said it was because they believed the stone intruded upon a fae path, so they cut it away to let the fae folk pass unhindered. The joke was that the cottage was haunted too, but the inhabitants were far more afraid of angering the fae than the resident ghosts. Did I now find myself in a similar position? I went home and packed a bag. I would have cleaned my house up after the guests left, and there was no presence from the basement door in the light of day, but my imagination wouldn't stop me wondering if I'd turned a corner or opened a door to find some scary little girl looking at me. 100 times, absolutely not. I had decided that I would test this fae theory of mine before making any further decisions. Just before I left, I poured a glass of milk and left it to the side of the basement door with a slice of bread. Then, making sure it was the very last thing I had to do, I unlocked the basement and hurried out the front door. I went out for dinner with my brother and his family. Ava seemed to have mostly recovered from her previous night's trauma. They didn't ask me about the missing bottle. Maybe they forgot, or maybe they knew something was off with the basement. I didn't tell anyone I wasn't going home that night. Instead, I spent an uneasy night in a cheap motel reading up on folklore. Turns out there's a lot of cultures where people leave out milk, food, even animal blood, just around the house to appease strange nocturnal humanoid creatures. Some of those creatures play pranks. Others suck the blood out of your toes and stole babies out of their cribs. Charming. In the morning, I headed back to my house. First thing I did was walk very cautiously over to the kitchen. Sure enough, the milk was at a lower level than when I'd left it. There were also nibbles out of the bread. A sharp rap came from somewhere deep in the house. One knock for yes. That first day, I waited for nightfall in the kitchen. I had a bag packed in the car just in case. I needed to, make a break for it. I was breaking out in a cold sweat, but I held my ground. The aura of menace never came out of the door. At around 1 in the morning, I very cautiously went up to my room and locked my door. As an extra precaution, thanks to my research, I poured a line of iron filings along the threshold of my room. Fae don't like iron, right? At least that's what the stories say. The sense of fear never returned to the basement door for a long time. And that seems to be how I formed a truce with the thing living in the basement. Every night I leave milk and a piece of bread on the kitchen floor by the basement door. It doesn't always eat it. One last note, and I add this as a note because I'm still unsure of what I saw was true or not. One night I was at home late for some reason or another. I hastily washed the dishes, locked the doors, and set out my peace offering on the kitchen floor. It was dark by then, and the windows were black panes. I turned the lights off one by one, backing towards the stairs, handing ownership of the downstairs to the night things. I ascended to the upper floor and finally turned off the stairlights. Besides the other night, fleeing with Ava through the basement, of which I received scratches on my calf as payment for breaking the rules, it was the only time I ever broke the rules. Maybe I heard something or saw something out of the corner of my eye. For whatever reason, I turned around and looked down into the darkness. There, on the 3rd or 4th step of the stairs, was a pale, small hand, raised out and reaching towards me. It connected to an impossibly long arm that snaked towards the kitchen, losing itself around the corner. In an instant, it whipped back into the shadows, out of sight. It was so fast, the whole thing might have just been a trick of my eyes. Regardless, I fled to my room and never ever glanced back into the darkness of the house again. I would like to say that besides that possible imaginary instance, I had no further dealings with the thing in the basement. But that's not the case. No, I'm afraid, as mad as it might sound, I would need its help, as the house went from mildly haunted to What the heck am I gonna do now? I have two problems that I'm always a little embarrassed to admit to, because there's always those who believe neither to be the real problem. The first problem is that I've had no long-term relationships in a long time. The second is that my house is haunted. Cue people lecturing me about priorities and handing me unsolicited life advice. I mention these things more to explain how the third of the 5 entities came to join my house. This was coming to a year of me living at the house. By that time, I'd set up a working, if not uncomfortable, relationship with the 2 entities. Knox, the first entity you might remember, communicates by creaking the house. 1 for yes, 2 for no. If I enter a room and I hear 2 knocks, I leave and return later. Other than that, communication between the 2 of us is seldom. The second entity lives in the basement and is appeased by milk and bread that I leave out every night. Truth be told, I don't know what guarantees my offerings confer upon me. I know it wanders around the house some nights, in some form. Because of that, I only leave my bedroom out of absolute necessity once it's dark. It has left me mostly unmolested in the sanctuary of my bedroom. Perhaps that's because I have left a line of iron dust along the threshold every night. It's surprising how quickly we can normalize lousy situations. There I was, having gotten so used to the little rituals in my life that kept the shadows at bay, I was beginning to divert my attention to other things, like the absence of a love life. I'm not great with online dating. My social circles have been frozen since graduation, plus I work from home mostly. Added to the challenge of finding dates, I was constantly wondering how on earth I would take a girl home to a haunted house. That was how I met Ella. Ella was the exact opposite of a girl that I would bring home to meet my mother. She was tattooed, pierced in all the wrong places. Well, all the right places, if you're me, I suppose. She smoked, wore heavy makeup, her thick, wavy hair dyed an electric purple. We met at a geek convention in another town. She was a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, and we learned we both lived in the same city. We somehow ended up hanging out around the same group because of, shared hometown, and although I couldn't take my eyes off of her, I had no idea how to strike up a conversation with her. My friend Vivian, however, forever my wingman, noticed me eyeing Ella, but doing nothing about it. So, she happened to let spill in conversation that I lived in a haunted house. Really? Ella squealed, her pink contacts locking with mine properly for the first time. I actually don't like talking about the conditions of my house. It's like thinking about a room that you should have cleaned out months ago. Except now the pile of clothes on the floor has been lying there for so long, it's developed a taste for human flesh. Yeah, I found myself saying, like really haunted. I don't actually know why you still live there, V added. Ella clapped her hands like a little girl. Oh my God, all right, tell me everything. So I did. She listened intently, gasping and nodding all the time. I don't remember any girl giving me this much attention for quite some time. Listen, you may not believe me, but I've been living with my guardian spirit and a whole bunch of other spirits my entire life. I've got the third eye, and I can see things that people can't. It's so rare to find a real haunting. Can I please, please, please visit your house? Ella begged. That's when several alarm bells started going off in my head. Firstly, who on earth goes out seeking these kinds of things with such glee? Secondly, bringing someone into the house who was so eager to get a reaction from the entities sounded as good an idea as poking a bear. Knox had proven to be benign. The basement thing, on the other hand, I was certain had the capacity to maim and kill. But in a city far from home, under bright sunshine, with the rapt attention of a beautiful girl, I said I suppose she could try. As the convention went on, Ella became quite friendly with me. Yet, it still surprised me that she said yes when I asked her out on a date. We went on our first date the evening the convention ended. Before we parted, she gave me a kiss on the cheek, and I promised her a tour of my house. A week later, Friday afternoon, she came over. When she got out of her car, she was rapt. I don't know what she saw when she looked at my house, but I guess it was everything she had hoped for. Now that it was actually happening, I was pretty nervous as I brought her around the place. Knox stayed strangely quiet. Perhaps he was used to people being apprehensive, as opposed to enthusiastic. However, upon entering the laundry room, 2 sharp raps sounded on the wall. Ella laughed excitedly and put her hands over her mouth. I quickly grabbed her by the shoulder and led her out of the room. I hesitated at the basement door, but she really wanted to go down there. It was the main attraction, after all. I'd been down there before, but that was before my last harrowing experience. Since then, I actually hadn't gone down there. It was still daylight, and the basement thing seemed dormant by day. So, not believing what I was doing for a pretty girl, I agreed to a very short visit downstairs. I warned her to keep her voice low, and she promised that if I said to leave, she would leave. She promised. So, very cautiously, I opened the basement door. I had not fixed the broken light in there, but there was enough light from the kitchen we could see all the way down. Holding her hand, I led her down the stairs. It was as I remembered it. Old, dusty tables with chairs stacked upside down against one wall. A little further on the opposite wall, an odd opening jutted into it. I've never understood what that space was for. You might have a small fridge in it if you were lucky, and only if it was lying on its side. Were it not for the yellow-painted diagonal scaffolding that crisscrossed it, that was. The space was its lair. Ella suddenly went ahead of me and approached it. I gripped her hand, and she turned back to look at me with a smile and intent in her eye. I shook my head at her, but she let my hand fall and approached the space noiselessly. She placed her hands within the foreboding area and beamed to herself. I would have grabbed her and forced her out of the basement, had I not been terrified of waking the entity with noise and clamor. To my relief, Ella retreated, seeming satisfied. She reached back, holding my hand again, and we left the basement. Once we were out and I'd shut the basement door, Ella burst into squealing joy. "That was amazing! I've never felt such an aura. Trust me, I have spent nights in so many abandoned buildings and so many graveyards. Most everything's rubbish, but oh my God, you have the real deal." It was about 4 in the afternoon then. It was still light, but for the last few months I tended to have dinner early so that I could retreat to my bedroom well before night. This led to an odd puzzle I'd been musing over. If I chose to bring Ella out for dinner, I might be returning to the house well after dark, which was far from preferable. If we ate at home, I would have to ask Ella to leave early, which seemed a little rude and against my wishes to spend more time with her. Ella provided the solution before I even presented the option to her. "Would you mind if I stayed the night?" I gulped nervously. Well, I could cook us an early dinner, and I guess we could watch a movie in my room. It's the safest place in the house after dark." She nodded enthusiastically, with bright, shining eyes. I'll spare everyone the details of the evening, but let's just say being in a haunted house really excited her. Something weird happened in the morning, though. I went into the attached bathroom to brush my teeth. Looking in the mirror, I saw Ella pop her head around the corner and look at me. It was only for a moment, then she ducked out. I finished brushing my teeth and went back into the bedroom. Ella was under the covers, still looking asleep. "You can use the bathroom now," I said. "Huh?" she said, sleepily turning over. "Oh, I thought you wanted the bathroom." She shook her head, her purple hair rippling across her face. Before I could pursue the matter any further, she got up and let the blankets fall off and pulled me into a kiss. Any questions I had blanked out of my mind. Like I said, the house really seemed to excite her. She was back a couple of weeks later. She would have returned sooner, but she had work stuff. She worked at a gallery and a series of event centers, and they'd had some talks that night. When she got out of her car, she was wearing an outfit that most certainly got my blood running. Whatever excitement I might have felt was put to a slow death when she opened her passenger door to reveal the most terrifying object I'd ever seen. An old, weathered doll. I'm even more petrified of dolls than I am of the dark, and that's saying something. "Hey, I want you to meet my lifelong friend, Edward. He's my spirit guide, and he's so happy to be here," she said, introducing the doll. Edward was a thing of my nightmares. Seeming made of pink plastic, he was 4 feet in length and wore a faded sleeping gown that matched his nightcap. It may have once sported some kind of pattern of sorts, but it now just looked blotched and diseased. His face was worn, and worse, the paint was stained and smeared in all manner of ways, giving the doll the impression of having been melted in a fire, as well as mauled by a bear, maybe. It seemed to glare at me with its jet black eyes, and its smile was unsettling, to say the least, like a snake that spotted its next meal. He was my Nan's. That's great. Hey, Ed, you're not bringing him inside, are you? Ella smiled at me and put a hand on my arm. She stood beside me, turning to face the creepy doll sitting in the car. Then she whispered in my ear, "Don't call him Ed. He doesn't like it. It's Edward. And of course I'm bringing him into the house." Look, I really don't think that's a good idea. It's okay. Edward can move around a bit on his own, but he's never hurt me, and there's his seal," she said. She lifted his nightcap and showed me a strange symbol that had been seared into his bald plastic head. She put it back down. "Nan told me that he's safe as long as the seal remains intact. He moves around? Just a little. He's not coming into the house." Ella made a face that seemed to ask if I was serious and call me a coward at the same time. Then she suddenly had a look on her face, like she was hearing something that only she could really hear, and she leaned towards Edward. "Huh? Oh, okay. Edward says he understands and he'll stay in the car." She closed the car door and looked mildly disappointed, but she gave me a smile and grabbed my hand as she led me into the house. I noted that she hadn't locked her car, but didn't say anything, as I felt I'd gotten as much of a compromise as I was going to get. I could feel the doll's eyes on me all the way back to the house. We'd finished watching a movie together in bed, and it was close to midnight. Ella was lying against me, and I could tell that she was bored. Suddenly, she sat up with a mischievous grin on her face. "Let's go." Go where?" "Explore your house, duh." "Ella, I know you're really into this kind of thing, but the basement thing isn't something that you want to mess with." "I have protection," she said dismissively. "Come on, let's go. I can't believe you're not curious." I'm very not curious. What do you mean protection?" "Look, I don't want to get into it, but I used to be in a sisterhood, and we made deals. It was kind of messed up, and I got out okay, but some of those contracts were binding, both ways, so things don't mess with me, and I have Edward. Come on." Her plastic friend's protection was not convincing, and I didn't budge an inch. "All right, fine," she said, a wild gleam in her eye. "I'm going by myself. You wait here." What? Wait, no!" But she'd already flung the door open and run out into the house. It had been a while since I faced the darkness of my home. I heard her footsteps going down the stairs. Then she said something that I couldn't quite make out. I was frozen on my bed, listening for more sounds, but there was only silence. When I couldn't take it anymore, I crept out of bed and approached the open door. "Ella," I said, my voice hoarse. There was no response down the stairs. I looked on the floor and noted that her feet had scraped my iron filings aside. I grabbed a small broom I had and put them back in a line across the threshold, hoping to keep whatever was in the basement at bay. Then I took a step over the black dust line into the corridor. 2 groans shuddered through the house. 2 for no. It was Knox. But I had never heard it sound like that before. Deep and loud. I got the impression of a cat bristling, trying to appear 3 times its size. Was Knox angry? Or was he scared? The last time I went against Knox's advice had been when my niece had gone into the basement. But the circumstances felt different now. My instincts screamed at me, and I made my way down the stairs despite them. At the top of the landing, I flicked on the Starrlight. Edward stood at the bottom of the stairs, staring up at me. "God!" I yelled, falling over. I scrambled backwards till my back hit the wall. Edward's eyes appeared black and empty, like a shark's. "Ella!" I cried out. "I thought we agreed the doll stays in the car." There was no reply. "Ella!" I called out again. "I'm going back in my room and locking the door." Still no response. "If you want back in, just knock on the door and tell me, okay?" Picking myself up, I ran back to my room, constantly glancing back at the stairs, half expecting Edward to appear on the landing. I slammed the door behind me, flipped the lock, and slid to the floor, breathing hard. Hours went by, and I didn't hear a sound for the rest of the night. Not even the creak of wood from Knox. I think I fell asleep with my back against the door, because I suddenly realized it was dawn. My windows were gray, and I could make out the silhouette of the treetops. I really needed the bathroom at that point. Hoping the morning brought my usual safety, I left my vigil over the door and went to the bathroom. Just in the middle of my business, I saw movement in the mirror. I couldn't see directly into my room, but I could see into the bedroom via the mirror. It was Ella. She appeared to have entered the bedroom and was crossing to the other side. To get her phone, maybe, I thought. "Ella?" I called out. Pulling up my pants and flushing the toilet, I hurried out, but Ella wasn't in the room. My room door was locked. How had she gotten in? How had she gotten out again? I didn't see her phone either. Had she taken it downstairs with her last night? I decided my sleep-deprived brain was just playing tricks on me. Frowning, I steeled myself and opened the bedroom door. The landing was empty. I stepped out into the corridor, listening for Knox to sound again, but I only heard morning birdsong. Very gingerly, I tiptoed to the stairs and looked down. Edward was nowhere to be found. I descended to the ground floor, and the house felt empty. Neither Edward nor Ella were anywhere to be seen. When I checked the driveway, her car was gone. When I'd gone through all the rooms, just in case Edward was hiding somewhere, I sighed, got my phone, and called Ella. She didn't pick up. I sent her a few messages throughout the morning, but I got no reply. Feeling lost about what to do, I began cleaning up the house. But as time went on, I began to get that odd feeling that I wasn't alone. While Knox was a somewhat omnipresent being in the house, I hadn't felt spooked by it for a long time. I started to get goosebumps. Someone or something was watching me. My next glimpse of what it was happened in my garage. There's a long, full-length mirror stood against the wall in there that I'd never found a place for, so there it stayed. I saw Ella in it, poking her head out from one side of the garage entrance. I spun around thinking she'd come back, but there was no one there. I went outside, but I didn't see her car either. I heard a creak from the house. Knox? What was that supposed to mean? A bit later, still feeling lost, I decided I'd drive to the supermarket and stock up. The store wasn't far, and being around people milling and shopping might make me feel better. The fear from the previous night had turned into disappointment that Ella had just vanished on me. I was driving home when I glanced into the rearview mirror, and Ella was staring back at me from the back seat. I screamed, accidentally stepping on the gas, and sent my car up the curve. The car jolted to a stop before I hit a small tree and somehow managed to unfasten my seatbelt, tumbling out the door and scrambling away from the vehicle. But I stopped after a few feet. What if Ella was stuck in the car and needed help? I came back to the car, cautiously, as though it might blow up any second. But the back seat was empty. It wasn't just that Ella shouldn't have been in the back seat of my car. It was the expression she'd had. She'd been smiling at me with a deranged look in her eye. I checked all my tires, and it appeared intact. The car looked drivable, but I didn't want to drive. I didn't even want to test it. Instead, I called V. "Hey, I really need your help." She must have heard the tension in my voice. Without question, she rolled up to me 20 minutes later. "You okay?" she asked, getting out of the car. Yeah, I'm fine. I don't think I can drive right now." V frowned at me and looked at the car. "I can take you home, but what are you going to do about your car?" We were in a small housing estate, and the road itself was pretty quiet. No one had come out to see what had happened during the accident. "You reckon I could leave it here for the night?" I asked. V shrugged. "Well, at least park it straight. Here, give me your keys." I handed V the keys, hoping it would be safe to let her inside the car. She parked the car without incident and came out. I felt relieved when she was fine, but then I felt sick. V gave me a concerned look as she walked back to me. "Hey, what's going on? Talk to me." I could only stare at the ground, not even sure where to start. Evening was coming, and shadows were drawing up long across the ground. Do you think I could stay at yours tonight?" I asked V. "I don't think my house is safe to go back to. I don't think I should be alone." V put her arms around me and led me back to her car. I totally forgot about my groceries. I sat in the passenger seat and was silent the whole drive, doing my best not to look into the mirror. When we got to V's, I broke down and cried. V hugged me and rubbed my back as though I were a kid. After a bit, while holding back sobs, I told V what had transpired over the last couple of weeks. She nodded in an understanding manner and didn't interrupt. At the end of it, she took a look around her house, stood up, and started putting stuff away. I realized she was clearing away anything that had a reflection on it. When she was done, she sat opposite me and took out her phone. "Well," she said in a problematic tone, "I think it's time you got some help." "What, a psychologist?" "No, I was thinking more exorcist." "What?" "Maybe a priest or a pastor." I decided to open my phone and start searching too. Just as I was about to press the first link on my search bar, my phone started ringing. "Ella?" I said, putting the phone to my ear. V looked back as her eyebrows raised. "Hey, can we meet, like somewhere in town?" "Yeah," I said slowly. I have questions." I know, I'm sorry," Ella replied. She gave me the address of a cafe in town. "I'll tell you what I can when we meet," she said, and abruptly put the phone down. V had her arms crossed when I looked up at her. Could you give me a ride?" "She better have a good explanation," V said, getting up and grabbing her jacket. The cafe had a small park across from it. V said she'd sit on a bench at the edge of the park, keeping me in sight. Ella was already sitting at a table out on the footpath with a cup of coffee before her. She wasn't drinking it, and she looked embarrassed. I took a seat opposite her. Hey, she said softly, trying to give me a smile. "So, you've been gone for less than a day, but I'm already seeing you everywhere I go," I said with a nervous grin. It wasn't a good joke. "Yeah," she said incredulously. "I know what you mean. Want to tell me what that's about?" "It's Edward," she said with a half whisper. "He doesn't like you. He really doesn't like you." That made me grit my teeth in anger for some reason. Feeling is definitely mutual. He doesn't want us to spend time with each other anymore, Ella said, staring into her cup. "Have you considered that taking relationship advice from a possessed doll is incredibly unhealthy, says the guy who refuses to move out of his haunted house. Touché, I said with a sigh. Look, I'm sorry. I like you. I really do. You're a sweet guy. You deserve much better, but Edward's all the family I have left. Family? It was Ella's turn to sigh. Sorry, but I have to listen to him. There were tears in her eyes now. No, you don't, Ella, I said, reaching out to hold her hand. Her hand shrank away from mine. He let loose one of them on you, she said quietly. I paused. In my sad, pathetic life, I've done a lot of stupid things. Some bad things. Some of them have led to spirits being attached to me. There's always Edward. I was hoping since you already lived in a haunted house, you would find me and these bizarre things I come with acceptable, I guess. Ella, She raised a hand and cut me off. She took a shaky breath and then mumbled something. I only caught the start of her sentence. He unleashed the what? Its name means the one who walks the mirrors. It was one of the spirits Edward's protecting me from. I think he trapped it within himself. Now he's let it go. It'll haunt your reflection, traveling from one mirror to the next. It can even come out, I think. My blood ran cold. I stopped breathing. Can it be stopped? Ella shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. I'm sorry. I've said too much already. Then, before I could stop her, she ran to her car. Wait, why does it look like you? What does it want? I cried after her. She didn't answer. She got into her car and started the engine. I saw Edward strapped into the passenger seat. I could feel those venomous black eyes boring into me. As Ella drove past, I swear the thing turned to stare at me. Have you ever felt so scared that your guts feel like they're going to empty its contents in both directions at the same time? Yet at the same time, a desperate anger lit a small flame against the hopelessness inside of me. It was the smile on Edward's face that did it. It was a victorious smile. Edward had gotten the girl and destroyed his competition. Except I wasn't destroyed yet, was I? My muscles felt like they were made of jelly, but somehow I stood up in defiance with my fist clenched, staring at Ella's car as it drove out of sight. V had crossed the road and was approaching me. What happened? Are you okay? I turned to V. I was shivering badly, but I couldn't tell from dread or fury. I got a plan, I told her through gritted teeth. That doll. That goddamn doll. It thought I didn't remember what the symbol on its head looked like. Later at my house, I think it was about 10:30, I stood with V in the living room. She was holding a simple hand mirror. I was preparing a couple of things on the countertop. You're crazy. This is the dumbest thing I've ever done. And I've seen some pretty dumb stuff. Yeah, I grimaced. Knox had been quiet. There was no presence from the basement either. It was as if both understood that what I was doing was important, and they were giving me room to do so. V had been uncomfortable entering the house. She had a bad experience with Knox once. I told you about that. I told her she didn't need to do this for me, but she insisted that someone had to save my ass if everything went to hell. I felt it approaching. The feeling that I was being watched deepened. I put my finger to my lips and V simmered down. Silently, I motioned for V to pass me the hand mirror. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and held it up so I could see my face in it. I then angled it so I could see over my shoulder. Behind me was the archway to the kitchen, which was lit by a soft orange glow. I didn't have to wait long. Something that might have been Ella popped its head to the right of the arch, then ducked away. The hair on my neck stood on end. A few minutes crept by, and V was shifting uncomfortably, foot to foot, her eyes darting from one shadow to another. I kept my eyes on the mirror, though. Then, even though I was expecting it, it was all I could do not to scream as a pale face with purple hair peeked over my shoulder. It smiled at me with a thin black smile and stared at me with unblinking eyes. It didn't really look like Ella, not close up. I frowned back at it, waiting to see what it would do. I think my defiance angered it, as its smile turned into a baring of teeth that were long and inhuman. I heard V gasp by my side. I think she had seen it in the mirror. Her gasp made me take my eyes off it for a split second. When I glanced back, I saw a white hand shooting out, filling the whole mirror, as if it meant to grab my face. I let go of the mirror and ducked to avoid the grasping hand. The mirror and I tumbled onto the carpeted floor, and V shrieked. That's when it got quiet. I got up and looked down. The mirror had landed face up, and I could see the thing thrashing about inside it. It appeared to be snarling and screaming, but I could hear nothing. Its background seemed to have frozen too. Rather than the ceiling, the mirror contained the living room and the kitchen archway, the same as it had when I was holding it. The thing was running around the mirror room in a hobbling fashion, but it didn't seem to be able to find its way out. It just kept running back and forth, and then it returned to the mirror's surface to thump and scream against it once more. I could hear V screaming her head off. Slowly I knelt down and held the mirror by its handle, lifting it up. I felt like I had a deadly spider in my hand, separated by a thin layer of glass in the container. "You're insane. You are actually insane," I heard V still going on. In the reverse of the mirror, I had etched onto the plastic the symbol I'd seen on Edward's cap. My gamble had worked. I'd lured the mirror demon into this mirror, on the off chance that the seal would trap it within. The theory could have gone wrong on so many levels. What if it required more than just the symbol to turn the mirror into a trap? What if the mirror demon couldn't be trapped the same way that Edward had in the doll? What if the mirror demon had used a different mirror to attack me? I don't know. All I knew was that it had worked. I put the mirror in a soft cloth bag and tightened the drawstring. Then I put the bag into a small safe box I had previously used for my passports and things. I'd stuffed it full of padding. I heard the safe box click as the numbers went back into something that wasn't the combination. I also put a padlock onto the ring that it had. On the safe and the padlock, I also drew the symbol with the permanent marker. V appeared to have calmed down somewhat now that the mirror was out of sight. "All right," she said, trying to catch her breath. "Okay, you caught the thing. Congrats, genius. You won. What now?" I stepped back from the locked safe, blood still rushing in my ears as I breathed heavily. V was right. I'd won. I'd allowed the feeling of victory to wash over me. For a moment, I felt like I could have taken on the entire world. Then I remembered the thing in the basement. My courage was somewhat humbled. Now I think I'm going to drink a very large glass of water. Then one day I'm going to cover this safe in cement. Then I'm somehow going to get a boat and drop it in the middle of the ocean. A single rap sounded from somewhere in the house. Vivian jumped as ever. It's okay, I said, putting a hand on her to calm her. I think the house was agreeing with me. "Hey, that offer to stay over at yours still stand?" V nodded at me and looked pale, unconvinced that Knox meant her no harm. "Let's say we get out of here then." I put the safe in my closet, then closed up the house. V followed me close everywhere, and Knox was very polite about not scaring her further. I left extra milk and bread by the basement as a thank you for giving me my space. I hope it understood the gesture. Then we left my house of horrors, at least for that night. What follows, I guess, is a bit of epilogue on the whole affair, and the preemptive questions I'm anticipating. Firstly, yes, V is a good friend whom I'm surprised to be blessed with. I surprised her the week after with a brand new game console that I know she'd been waiting for. Then there's the issue of keeping the mirror. Would smashing the mirror kill the thing or release it? I don't know. I felt unconfident about testing it. So I didn't break it. I faced the problem and kept wanting to keep it in sight at all times, not wanting it out of sight ever. In the end, I compromised on my rule. I cooperated with Knox. It seemed to not like the thing any more than I did. We found a place in the house it approved of hiding it. I won't say where. Then I just trusted that Knox would guard it and warn me if anything happened. If anyone's going to ask me what the symbol is, I won't tell you. V thinks that it might get cults or something looking for me, and I've got enough problems to deal with. Thank you very much. Sorry, I truly hope I don't run into the mirror demon again. Finally, was I serious about cementing the mirror and dropping it in the ocean? I was, in fact. I just have to find someone who's willing to take on a job like that, of cementing a mystery box when other things started to happen. It's not the last time I had to deal with the mirror demon. There's still Entity 4 and 5 to tell you about, though. Perhaps I'll tell you a little more sometime. I was woken up by a sharp creaking somewhere above my head. My clock told me it was 5 in the morning. The house continued to creak, sounding oddly like a crow cawing. As a rule, I don't leave my room till morning. Not only am I afraid of the dark, but I live in a haunted house. It's true, since I'd moved in a year before, I discovered that not one, but 2 non-human residents exist here. And as if my house wasn't full enough, I recently added a 3rd to the mix. The creaking wasn't just the wind. It was the first entity, Knox. Knox rarely bothers me in my bedroom, and I'd never woken up to hear him before. I just wanted to roll back under my blankets, but knowing I wouldn't get back to sleep, I instead flicked on the lamp on my nightstand. The wood noises stopped abruptly and were replaced by the sound of a whistling wind. Something about the wind struck me as strange. I got out of bed and unlocked my door, opening it just a fraction and very nervously peering out through the slit. The landing was dark. I couldn't see anything, but I could still hear the wind. It took me a minute to realize the sound was coming from inside, not outside the house. Was there a window or a door open? I glumly decided that this was one of the times I was going to have to be brave, and went down. Somehow I knew it before I even saw it. I knew it would be Brian. I knew he must have broken back into the house to explore the tunnel he'd found. The sliding door in the kitchen that led out to the backyard was ajar, and I could see Brian sitting there on a stool by the dining table. He was a dark silhouette against the distant streetlight. I felt indignant rage rising up in me like bile. "Brian, I wasn't kidding. I'm going to call the police," I said, as I flicked on the orange kitchen light. His back was to me, and he was hunched over the dining table, hands clutching desperately at his hair. A muffled but continuous moan was coming from him, and that's when I noticed a dark liquid dripping onto the dining room floor. "Brian?" He stood up suddenly, the stool clattering to the floor, and turned to me. I felt something splatter my clothes and tasted iron in my mouth. He fumbled forward, arms flailing wildly and clutching the air, as if he was going to grab me. The horrible moan turned into a raspy scream, and as my brain slowly came to grips with what I was seeing, I finally registered that his eyes and tongue had been torn out. I don't talk much about my family. I guess the trending word to describe it these days is toxic. My aunt serves as kind of a matriarch of the family. Something about the inheritance, being the favorite child of my grandparents, other stuff like that I've never bothered to understand. It lets her wield some sort of power over them. That's not to say that I have a great relationship, even with my own parents. I don't wash my family's dirty laundry in public, suffice to say. It was a beastly thing to deal with. I guess that's why I was so eager to gain independence. I moved out and bought this house and keep my family several states away, only to find myself haunted. Sounds like I'm about to blame my parents for this mess I'm in, doesn't it? That would be unfair. However, I can't help but think that my family's dysfunction was reasonably responsible for what was happening to my cousin when he discovered the fourth entity I share my house with. My aunt holds me completely responsible for what's happened to her son. I'm officially not welcome at any family gatherings where she's involved, which is most of them. I think I'm cut off from whatever the inheritance is, too. I honestly couldn't care less. But that's not the point. I actually do feel quite sorry for what happened to my cousin. Some days I even feel a little guilty. If only I'd stood my ground and not let him stay at all, or kicked him out early. Boundaries, right? Not even a month has passed since I dealt with the third entity, when I got a phone call from my mom. I only get phone calls from her when she wants something. Hey, your cousin Brian's moving to your city. He needs a place to stay. Do you think he could live with you? Sorry, Mom, but my place isn't suitable for anyone to visit right now. I'm actually having quite a lot to deal with. You think you're the only one with problems? Come on, I know you got a spare room. Just let your cousin stay. You know your aunt helped us out a lot when you were young, right? No, Mom, I've been through enough. It's been a lot lately. You wanted to move out? You didn't have to move out. Now that you're out and you're learning how hard it is to have responsibility, you want to be selfish and not help anyone. Do you think it's right that other people should have problems just because you wanted to create your own problems? You know your cousin can't hold down a job. At least let him stay until he finds one, okay? You know how hard it is for your dad and me when your aunt is angry with us. We let you go and live by yourself. You're making money now, right? And we haven't asked for any of that. I think you can help a family member out this once, don't you? Okay, fine, I said. He has 2 weeks, then he better be moving out. Don't be like that. You help him out for as long as he needs. I'll tell your aunt, my mom snapped and put the phone down before I could protest. Fish sticks. She messaged me later to tell me that Brian would be arriving in 2 days. I'm uncomfortable with anyone staying overnight at my place. My brush-ins with the 3 previous entities had involved people staying over. This wasn't just anyone either. This was Brian. This was drug dealer Brian. This was fired from 7 jobs Brian. This was sets fire to his school Brian. This was killed his girlfriend in a car accident while driving drunk and still totaling the next car he got while drunk driving again Brian. But Brian evidently had a problem following rules, and there were rules for living at my house that ought to be respected. I tried making a quick list in my head. If you hear 2 knocks in a room, leave and return later. Do not disturb the milk and bread by the basement door. Do not enter the basement without consulting me first. Do not wander around the house at night unless absolutely necessary. Do not break the lines of black dust, the iron filings, at the threshold of bedroom doors. If you do, sweep them back into place. Inform me immediately if you see anyone or something strange in the mirrors. Brian arrived as scheduled. How was he still permitted to have a driver's license after that, I don't know, but he's a fair bit larger than me, taller and wider. Dude, Brian said, coming out of his car, this is your place? Man, what a dump. I didn't bother to reply. Was it strange to feel offended over my haunted house? I gave him my best dirty look. Hey man, I'm starving. You got any food? He said, completely unfazed. Dinner's at 5, Brian. Bring your things up to the guest room. There had been no talk of being paid for accommodations or groceries from his mother, my aunt, or Brian. Was I expected to house and feed this guy for free? He only had a couple of bags with him, which he hoisted on his right shoulder. Then he trudged in, followed me up to the guest room. I scowled at the boot prints he trailed in. Was I supposed to clean up after him too? I had been so caught up in listing rules regarding the entities, I hadn't thought of basic rules for living with a housemaid. By the time he'd thrown his bags unceremoniously onto the guest room floor and plopped himself on the bed, I had reduced my rules to a single rule in hopes he would follow it. "All right, listen, Brian," I started. He was flipping through his phone. "You can't wander around the house at night." That seemed to catch him by surprise, enough that he looked up from his phone. "Why not, cuz? You doing something naughty around the house at night?" he said, waggling an eyebrow. "No, it's... This is where I realized I hadn't thought of how I would word that the house was haunted to him. Just that I like to keep it quiet around here. "Don't worry, I'll be quiet," he said, looking back at his phone. "I'm serious, Brian. No wandering around at night." Yeah, all right." I shook my head and went down to make dinner. We survived dinner without speaking to each other. He just looked at his phone the whole time. Then after dinner, he plonked himself on my couch and turned on the TV. Then he noticed my game console and turned that on and started playing a fighting game. "You mind maybe asking before using my things?" Yeah, he said, absently mashing buttons. It was just past 6 and the sun was setting. "Man, I'm serious about the night thing. You better finish that up before the sun sets. And please, wash your own dishes." "Uh-huh." Rolling my eyes, I went to the pantry to grab my usual nighttime snack rations. Upon seeing my stashes of chips, biscuits, and instant noodles, I grabbed some spare shopping bags and hauled the lot up to my room. No way I was going to let Brian eat all those while I was asleep. It was 11 at night when a flurry of knocks came on my bedroom door. I opened the door to find Brian standing outside, white as a sheet. "Dude, I saw a ghost. Your house is haunted, man." I kept checking over his shoulder. What did it look like? "I don't know, man. I turned around and there was like a little girl in the kitchen. She was all dark. Then I just booked it up here, man." "Hair color? Height?" "What? I don't know. Black, I think. About yay high," he said, putting a hand to just below his chest. Okay, not the mirror demon. It was the basement thing. "Yeah, look, just stay in your room like I said. The black dust by your door keeps you safe." He hesitated. He was still pretty pale and checking the stairs. "For real? Like, what if I need to use the bathroom?" He had a point. I took out my dustpan and broom and swept the iron filings from his door. Then I placed them in a line near the top of the stairs. "There, that gives us the upstairs. Don't break the line." He nodded and shakily went to his room and shut the door. I heard the click of a lock and I went back to mine. The incident seemed to have humbled him a little bit. He was a lot more polite and placated me for the next few days. Although there was still no offer of rent or grocery money, he stayed in his room all night, sleeping, I suspected. He'd come down for dinner, the only meal I decided I was willing to cook for two, then disappeared back to his room. I had work to attend to, and I didn't pay him a lot of mind. This arrangement only lasted a few days, though. One night he came rapping on my door again. It was almost 12, and I was just about to go to bed. I opened up grumpily. He had the most ridiculous smile on his face. "Yeah?" "Dude, ghost girl. She's trying to tell us something." "What?" "I've been trying to catch her on camera, man. I've been going down there at night to film her. Then she looks like she's gonna get close, and I run upstairs." "The hell is wrong with you?" I half shouted. "Dude, come on, it's a real ghost. Stuff's like viral as hell. We could be famous. You want to see my video? I got a really good one tonight. She appeared in the kitchen and walked all the way to the laundry room. It was so scary I followed her, but man, look at this footage." No, this is not okay. "But this is where it gets good, man. Some guy on the forum, did some stuff with the footage, made it brighter and some stuff, and you can make out, that she points at things." My brain was so torn between intrigue and rage that I couldn't respond. "On the nights I've seen her, she walks, somewhere random and points at a piece of furniture. Sometimes it's the couch. Twice it's been that bookshelf in the living room. Once it was under the kitchen sink. Then she just disappears. I think she wants us to find something, man. Brian, I've had like so many posts about this thing, bruh. Brian, what? That thing is not friendly. Stop this. I don't know what it wants you to see, but it's dangerous. Come on, man, you chicken. You still a baby, Mr. I can afford a house? That was a reference to me being the youngest cousin on my mother's side. I was always referred to as the baby. It implied that I was a spoiled brat, so it seemed to really annoy some of them. I'd been able to afford a house at such an early age, earlier than most of them. Yeah, I can afford a house, and you're not posting videos of my house online. I don't care how many likes you're getting. Stop it, now. Whatever, man, screw you, he said, and stalked off to his room. It was icy between us for the next week. Well, icier than it had already been, I guess. He still came down, expecting dinner at 5, and started taking his plate up to his room. Then he would dump it discreetly in the sink and try to wash it. He obviously never did housework, but perhaps what I wondered about most was how long it had been since he washed his clothes. I never really saw him do laundry. It had been almost 2 weeks since he arrived. I figured it was the end of whatever commitment of kindness I owed any family member, and was preparing myself for the confrontation when I asked him to leave. So, on Saturday, I'd messaged my mom that I was going to talk to Brian and have him leave by the following week. I put my phone on silent and braced for the storm of texts and calls that would surely follow that message. But my mind was set. The next day at dinner, I was going to have a serious talk with him. I got a message from my friend Vivian, close to midnight, that said, "Is this your house?" Attached to it was a link. I clicked the link that led to a live feed, and it was indeed my house. Brian was filming right that moment. I was livid and was just about to get out of bed, throw open the bedroom door, and crash his party, when I heard his voice on the feed. "All right, guys, the temperature's dropping. She's coming, boys," Brian whispered. I kept watching. He was filming from the bottom of the stairs, and you could make out my kitchen furniture in the faint light. Then there was a long silence. I couldn't see it, but after a minute or two, Brian's phone started tracking something. The screen was so dark it was impossible to say what. As whatever it was came closer, Brian ascended a few steps up as if ready to make a break for it. But the thing, which was still hidden in the shadows, continued past the stairs into the living room. Then, for the briefest of moments, I caught sight of some odd humanoid shape silhouetted against the dimly lit window. It didn't look like a girl. It looked like a child-sized, soot-black snowman with what may or may not have been an arm sticking out of its side. Then it lost itself in the gloom. The camera tracked it a little bit longer, then stopped, pointing more or less to my front door. It held there for about 10 seconds. Then I heard Brian's voice come back. "You see that? Yeah, I think she's pointing at that shoe cupboard." There was a pause where I assumed he was reading some messages on an app. Yeah, I think she's gone for the night. Temperature's climbing back up. But I've known her to come back twice in a night, guys. I'll want to check that shoe cupboard out. I just don't want to get caught with her blocking my exit, in case I can't get upstairs. Yeah, lights are a good idea. She disappears when I flick the lights on bright. The feed glared a bright orange-white as the living room light came on. As the views returned to normal, Brian announced, "Okay, boys, we're doing this. Let's hope she stays away." The camera bounced its way to the shoe cupboard. "All right, no sign of her. I think we're good. Let's see what's up with this cupboard. Just a bunch of shoes. Don't see anything strange here, guys. Let's check out." Brian moved his phone to check behind the shoe cupboard. There was a square hole roughly a couple of feet wide on each side. in the wall behind the cupboard. "Guys!" Brian's voice came out excitedly. "What is this?" The video went haywire as I heard Brian moving the cupboard out of the way. Then it focused on the hole. Brian appeared to be crouched and trying to see into it. Its walls were made of naked concrete, and it just stretched away, the light of the torch seeing no end. I don't understand. The wall was one of the house's outer walls. It couldn't even be 3 feet thick. Was it the outside they were looking at? No, you could see the wall of the corridor go on at least 5 feet past the phone light. "Think I should go in?" Brian asked. "Yeah, okay. YOLO. Man, it's narrow in here." The screen got black with sudden flashes of Brian's hands as he started to crawl into the space. That's when I decided I needed to intervene. A shadow child had just shown him a passageway that defied the laws of physics, and his audience thought crawling into it was a good idea. Maybe they all thought this was some elaborate prank, some ARG that would promote a movie or something. Maybe this was some sort of alternate reality anyway. How the hell did that passage even exist? I don't remember a hole there when I moved in. Surely I would have seen it when I put the cupboard there. I hurried out of bed, went out onto the landing area, and reached the top of the stairs. I brought myself to a sudden halt there. The downstairs was pitch black now. Hadn't Brian turned on the living room light? The hackles on the back of my neck prickled as I felt the air drifting up from below, chilly as though from an open fridge. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw it. A patch of black against black, standing at the kitchen entrance, peeking at me from around the corner. I think it waved at me. Sorry, but I'm not that fond of Brian. I backed into my room and closed the door. The feed was still going, but with a steady interference now. The images flashed by like a jaunty slideshow, and Brian's voice came through in short barks. "There's a dead body in here! Oh, crap!" The screen showed a gray, dusty mound on a rough concrete floor. It might have been a body. "This is..." Static. "Oh!" The video quality reduced further into a snapshot that came through every 5 seconds. An image suddenly came through of a figure sitting by a table, its hands resting on it. The figure was skeletal, and its jet black surface gleamed like someone had decided to carve the grotesque thing out of obsidian. In fact, the only reason I didn't think it was a statue was the fine, long hair sticking out of its skull. Then the feed froze completely, a blurry capture of the black reflective hand against the gray table and an open book. There was writing on the open page, but the image was far too unfocused to tell what it had said. Was it a list, maybe? I panicked. What was I supposed to do? Did I call the police? Did I try to go downstairs? I paced my room back and forth. I stared back at the feed again and again, but it stayed frozen on those hands. I almost called V, but I didn't. Finally, I decided to go back to the staircase and see if the basement thing was still guarding it. I opened my door, and I could tell the living room light was back on. I hurried across the landing, but even before I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard a commotion from the living room. It was Brian, covered in dust and scrambling to pick himself up. He was hooting in laughter and crying at the same time. I glanced back warily towards the dark kitchen, but it was empty. Then to the wall where the hole should have been. It wasn't there anymore, though. I strode across the living room and felt the wall. It was solid brick. I rapped on it a few times to be sure. What the hell? I turned back to Brian, who was now making his way up the stairs. "Hey, you want to tell me what the hell just happened?" He ignored me and started to clamber up. I followed him, still wanting to yell at him, but decided it was better to do so behind the safety of the iron filings. He got to his room and sat shaking on his bed. I stopped at the door and stared at him with my fists clenched. "I was watching your feed. What happened to the passage? It was beyond the shoe cupboard, right?" You were watching? Did you Did you think he meant what he said? What are you talking about? The guy behind the wall, sitting at the table. Do you think he meant it? Brian was suddenly standing and shouting. I paused suddenly, taken aback by Brian's sudden shift in demeanor. Sorry, I didn't hear what he said. He sat back down on the bed, nursing his forehead with one hand. Let me see your phone. What? Your phone, Brian demanded, still looking down, voice rising once more. No, I said, folding my arms. He moved a lot faster than I thought he could. Before I knew it, he had lunged at me, knocking me out of the doorframe and pinning me against the opposite wall. Give me your damn phone, he said, through gritted teeth. I wasn't able to break free, but my sense of anger and pride would not let me give in. No, I spat out. I don't think he realized I had my phone in my robe pocket, or he probably would have just grabbed it. He looked like he wanted to punch me when the lights downstairs flickered and went out. Brian's gaze shifted immediately to the stairwell beside us. He let go of me and turned back to his room. Hey, I said, coughing. The door was closing, but I threw it back open. I was so angry, the threat of the stairwell, now full of inky blackness, didn't even enter my mind. You're not welcome here anymore. Get out. If you're still here tomorrow morning, I'm calling the police. I don't care what your mother says. Then I stomped back to my room and locked the door. I pulled out my phone. Brian's feed was still running, but it was no longer the hand on the book. It was just black. He must have left it in the passage that didn't exist anymore. Something came through on the audio, though. A screech from a far, far away place. Finally, after 15 minutes, the feed completely lost connection. Morning came. I was lying in bed, refusing to get up, even though it was 9 and usually up by 7, as the night's events hadn't given me much sleep. There was a knock on the door. I sighed and opened it a fraction of an inch. Look, dude, I need to stay here, okay? I shook my head. No, not okay. You're moving out today. I don't care if you have to live out of your car. Get out of my house. Brian looked disheveled. You don't understand, man. I understand perfectly. You've been messing with the entities in my house when I expressly told you not to. Then you decided it was okay to shove me against a wall. Screw you. Get out of my house. I need to get back in there, okay? I shook my head. Get out of my house. I'm calling the police if you're not out by lunch. And if I have to, I'm putting a restraining order on you. He looked like he was going to explode, but instead he just stormed back to his room. I could hear him beginning to throw stuff into his bag. Not even 20 minutes later, I heard his car engine roar and the wheels skidded out of the driveway. I sighed in relief and went to clean up my house. There was still dust and debris all over the living room, and Brian's room was unsurprisingly a pigsty. My mother did message me, telling me to put up with Brian, and I took some relish telling her that Brian had already moved out. Then I ignored her following texts and phone calls for the next couple of days. The mystery of the disappearing passageway irked me. I went online, seeing if I could find any of the videos Brian had uploaded, but it looked like he had deleted all of them, and I couldn't track any of the forums where people might have left responses. I didn't try very hard before I decided to just let the matter be. Perhaps I should have been more uncomfortable with the idea of a ghost girl or the basement thing in my house that had pointed at the furniture with a disappearing passage behind it. But I'd been living in the house for a year, and strange things just came with it. I left them alone, and they left me alone. Apparently, though, that hadn't been Brian's motto. It was the third morning after he left that I found Brian, blinded and unable to speak, blood pouring out of the ragged orifices of his face, thrashing around in my kitchen. When he couldn't find me via groping around, he managed to find the kitchen stool and threw it at where he guessed I was. I ducked as it whooshed over me. Then he went into a mad rampage, grabbing anything he could feel and throwing it around. I was too horrified to even tell him to stop. I just ran to my room and called emergency services. I was shuddering and thinking about the wails and moans I heard from downstairs while waiting for the ambulance to arrive. The aftermath was as hectic as you could have imagined. I'll try to tell you it as cohesively as I can remember. After emergency services collected Brian, my house was investigated as a potential crime scene and cleared when, other than Brian flinging things around, there was no sign of violence. No one ever gave me any notion of when, where, or who had mutilated Brian. Of course, the police questioned me. I told them the truth as much as I could without sounding insane. Brian and I had a falling out. He'd been living here for 2 weeks. I woke up and found him having broken and entered my house and in that condition. They came back to question me again the next day at the motel I was staying at while my house was being investigated. They didn't find anything as far as I could tell, and I haven't heard from them since. My aunt tried to contact me incessantly. I blocked her number, but then she showed up at my house. I didn't let her in the house. She was obviously distressed, and at least she wasn't speaking at me with her accusatory tone at this point. I told her I was sorry, but I didn't know what had happened to Brian. It was true. I really didn't know what had happened to Brian. When she left, though, I later heard from my mother that she fully blamed me for Brian's sorry state. My mother held me responsible, too. I told her that they could all go to hell. I guess Brian was already there, somewhat. I don't know what happened to Brian. I never went to visit him, and I'm unlikely to meet him anytime soon. As much of a miserable specimen of humanity as he might be, I would never have wished this fate upon him. I hope he'll find some sort of way to go on living, find some sort of peace in the perpetual darkness that he now lives in. Before I left, and as the police bustled in and out, I had noticed the cupboard beneath the sink was open. There were pools of blood in there that didn't look like they had been flicked from Brian's frantic motion. Was that where the passage had taken him? What had he seen in those passages this time? What had the black figure shown him or said to him? I still don't know. But soon I'd have to walk those narrow passages myself and make a deal with the person who waited with the open book within my wall. I've counted them as the fourth entity in my house. There's just one to tell you about then. The Midnight Minutes had been summoned. My name's Andy, and I live at a residential college of a university. In an effort to promote cross-cultural and political exchange, the student body had formed a group called the Midnight Minutes. A number of individuals from varying beliefs would come together at least once a month to discuss a matter over. The discussion would be then synopsized and put into the student newsletter. In tradition, these meetings would take place in the student common room late at night, usually starting at 10 in the evening, but as they would often continue for hours into the night, the name the Midnight Minutes stuck. I belonged to the 6th generation of the Midnight Minutes members. I was the atheist of the group, and politically sat somewhat left-center. While there were our regularly scheduled meetings, there were also ad hoc emergency meetings if one of us had a topic that we really needed to talk about. That would result in a summons. Alicia had summoned us. I was the earliest, Chloe coming next. With a plus-size figure, faded clothes that always looked starchy and frayed and uncomfortable, Chloe was the evangelical Christian. She was right-wing, pro-life, anti-LGBTQ marriage, New World Order, conspiracyist, young Earth creationist. But at least she wasn't a flat earther. Needless to say, I found Chloe insufferable, although she did always try to be nice to me, prays for my salvation every night, and yada yada yada. She greeted me with a chirp, which I grunted in reply to. Before I was forced to endure any small talk, Jordan and Raj came in. Jordan and Raj are Hindus, and gay, and yes, they're seeing each other. I found them amusing, as it was easy to lure them into self-conflicting arguments between their professional religion, Indian customs against their LGBTQ identities, especially since their not terribly religious. No, what made Jordan and Raj interesting was their real passion, ghost hunting. Here's where we got into serious debate. The paranormal to me is completely lacking in evidence, but they were true believers. I did follow them out to a couple of expeditions, an old factory and an abandoned house, and my conclusion was that ghost hunting is the most boring experience in the world. Sure, the places are creepy, but waiting in the dark for 10 hours with no electricity, mobile service, or working plumbing for nothing to show up at all is tedious. We waited for Alicia. She was a Satanist. As vexing as I found Chloe, I found it difficult who was worse. Chloe was part of a religion that affected politics and therefore caused a lot of people to be mistreated. Satanism, unless you buy into Chloe's conspiracy theory that it controls the government, was actually more sensible, simply built around embracing the principle that human beings are selfish. However, it had its creepy aspects, and Alicia seemed far more interested in the occult side of things than the life principles. One would have thought this often put Alicia in league with Raj and Jordan, belief-wise, but the two always turned almost viciously skeptical with Alicia. I think they were in truth scared of her. I think everyone was, a little. While waiting, I politely asked Raj and Jordan about their most recent ghost hunting venture. Predictably, it had been an underwhelming affair. They were a bit bummed and were considering stopping their exploits as they were entering their final semester. Chloe encouraged this by asking them to seek God in repentance, but although I didn't believe in ghosts, I was oddly disappointed that they were giving up on their enterprise. It had made them interesting, and at least ghost hunting was not an organized religion. 20 minutes went by, and I was just about to call Alicia when my phone rang. Speak of the devil, she wanted a video call. I flipped the accept call button, and Alicia's face filled the dark screen. Dark-skinned goth, Alicia's teeth gleamed white like a shark's as her mouth pulled into a broad smile. "Hello, everyone," she greeted. I put my phone down on a coffee table before us. Raj and Jordan craned over so that they could be in the frame, but Chloe only moved a fraction closer with her forehead in the picture. "What's going on, Leash?" I asked. "Thought you were joining us." "I'm predisposed at the moment," she said, smiling. "I have a challenge for you, a test of faith, if you will." Raj chuckled. "Sorry, Leash, we've already given that a shot." Raj and Jordan had attended a seance with Alicia and her coven once. Unfortunately, the power of darkness had not chosen to reveal itself to them, something our Hindu ghost hunters had never let her forget. Tonight, however, Alicia did not seem discouraged by her previous failures. "Oh, but you're really going to love this one," she replied, her voice lowering into a hiss. "There's a little house in the suburbs out here. I've just recently gotten to know the owner and stayed over myself. It's the real deal. She's invited all of us over to spend the night on Saturday. If you can last a night, that is." "One of your Satanist friends, Leash? Got us a bit of a haunted house attraction? Some Halloween fun, maybe?" "Not at all," Alicia interrupted. "Bring anything you want to investigate. Infrared cameras, ultraviolet torches, X-ray vision goggles, anything. You can even visit early, if you like." Chloe piped up in a shrill voice. "I'm sorry, but I came to these meetings to represent Jesus and share the word of God. I wish you all would stop turning these groups into a way to interact with Satan and his minions." Chloe had a point. This was meant to be a discussion group. "Faith a little shaky these days, Jesus girl?" Alicia sneered. Chloe sighed and rolled her eyes. Then she got up and made to leave. Before she did, though, she looked at us three boys solemnly. "The Holy Spirit is telling me you shouldn't go ahead with this. I'll be praying very hard for all of you. Good night." Raj and Jordan were thinking. Jordan shrugged and tapped his boyfriend on the shoulder. "How about one last one for the show?" he asked. "Yeah, sure, why not? One last one," I thought. Well, it's not like I had a date or anything lined up. All right, Leash, I'm in. But if Satan doesn't show up with a beer in hand, we're all going to make a big post about this in the student newsletter. Deal. I'll send you the address, she said. Then the call went dead. Well, that was a fast meeting. The weekend rolled around, and I rocked up to the address that Alicia had given us. It was about 5:30 in the evening, but gathering clouds had blocked the remainder of the sunlight and formed an ugly bulbous shape in the sky. I saw Raj and Jordan had already arrived. The car doors were open, and there was a trail of ghost hunting camera equipment going to the ajar front door. From inside, I could hear them moving around. The house was located in the suburbs. It was very plain looking. Small patch of grass outside was brown and dry, and the facade needed a new coat of paint to be sure. To be about 20 years old, I guess. I poked my head in and saw a girl seated on the couch, flipping through her phone. She had bright pink wavy hair and wore a tight-fitting leather outfit. She looked up at me with her bright pink contact lenses and flashed me a smile. This appeared to be Alicia's friend that we would be hanging out with. But she was also kinda hot. "Hi," she greeted me. "You must be Andy. Welcome to my house. My name's Ella." She grabbed my hand and shook it. "Come on in. Let me give you a tour before I leave for the night." "You're not staying?" I asked. "Oh no. Best to let you all experience the fright for yourself. As unlucky last, this here's gonna be your bed." She waved her hand at the long sofa in the living room. "Your friend's got the guest room upstairs." "I'll survive," I said, putting down my overnight bag by the couch. "Come on round then. It's not a big place. Back here's the kitchen. You're welcome to anything in the fridge or pantry. This is the basement door. Most haunted place in the house, usually. That's where she lives, at least." "She?" I said. "Oh yeah," Ella replied with a wicked grin and glanced at me sideways. "You're welcome to go down and say hi if you've got the balls, but even if you don't, she'll likely come up to visit at some point of time during the night. When she does, I'd advise you to go upstairs. I don't think she goes upstairs, or just make a new friend, right? I'm sure she's lovely, but she's never wanted to talk to me." Ella ended, giving a mock pout. "Right." Ella laughed. "You're a tough one. I like you. You don't believe in ghosts anyway, do you? Alicia told me so. Come on upstairs." She led me up the stairs that were by the kitchen entrance. I saw Raj and Jordan fussing over a mess of equipment on the floor. Jordan waved at me. "This here's the guest room your friends are in, and back over there is the spare bathroom. To the front is my bedroom. I've locked it, and I hope I can trust you all to respect my privacy." Sure, no problem," I said. "Okay then, good luck, guys." Raj and Jordan yelled out their thanks and goodbyes. I followed Elle out to the front door where her bag was. She slung it over her shoulder and walked to her car in the garage. "Is Alicia going to show up tonight?" I asked before she got in. She didn't say. "Oh, I'm pretty certain she'll show up eventually," Ella said, smiling as she got in the car. "All right, yes, one last thing. I told your friends this too. The challenge is you have to stay through the night. There will be a lot of scary things going down, but when morning comes, you'll all be safe. If it really gets to be too much, then just leave. No judgment, but you look like a guy who knows how to handle himself." Was that a flirt? I decided it was now or never. "Hey, think I could get your number sometime?" She looked at me with a surprised smile and a glinting pink eye. Then she laughed. "Tell you what, tough guy, if you're still here when I get back in the morning, I'll give you my number." She backed out of her driveway into the road and stopped. "And hey," she yelled, "don't go into my room. That's the only real rule." With that, and a wink, she revved off. It started to drizzle. I looked up at the sky. It felt like the start of a high school essay. It was a dark and stormy night and all that, and 3 idiots were staying overnight in a stranger's house, looking for ghosts. Lightning flashed in the distance, and for a moment I had a strange vision. Across the road was a small park with a few stunted trees in it. One of those trees in the lightning flash had appeared to be a very large hand sticking up from the ground, and on the tip of the forefinger, it had Alicia's face smiling at us. Then the vision was gone. I stared into the growing gloom, couldn't make out anything as the low peals of lightning thunder caught up and rumbled over the house. I glanced to my side and saw one of Raj and Jordan's torches conveniently nearby. I grabbed it and shone it back into the darkness where the trees were. Just some twisted old trees. I sniggered at myself. Could it be that I was getting spooked? My society would be disappointed at my lack of rational reasoning. A burst of static made me jump and spin around. It was Raj testing out his EVP machine. I sighed deeply. I hated those things. Shaking my head, I shut the front door. The air was humid and I was sticky from the day, so I thought perhaps I'd have a shower before ordering some pizza for dinner. The shower was good, nice pressure, it was hot. I stepped out and dried myself and went over to the mirror. It had steamed up, and I was just about to wipe off my reflection when I saw the writing on it. For a second, I thought it was written in some foreign language, but instead it was just written in reverse. 1 for yes, 2 for no. I chuckled. Now, this was an elaborate prank. I was pretty sure no one had crept into the bathroom while I was showering to write on the mirror, but it had been someone that had written on the mirror beforehand so that when the steam condensed, the writing would be revealed. Satisfied with my rationalism, I wiped the condensation off the mirror, but the writing wouldn't come off. I looked closely at it, and it seemed the steam and writing was on the other side of the mirror glass. Eventually, the steam on that side faded, and so did the writing. Weird, I thought. I thought about testing whether the writing would reappear with more steam. Perhaps the mirror could be lifted? Just as I placed my finger under the mirror to see if I could pry it from the wall, 2 wooden creaks sounded from above my head. I smiled. I guess I had my response. 2 for no, eh? Well, better listen to the mysterious writing then. See how spooky Alicia really made this house. Thunder came from outside. The storm was truly helping the atmosphere. Looking around, Raj and Jordan appeared to have sorted out their equipment. I poked my head around the guest bedroom, espying Jordan there. "Pizza?" I asked. "Way ahead of you, man. Already ordered. You owe us 15, Jordan said. "All good," and I gave him a thumbs up. I walked down the stairs, and there was a knocking on the front door. Was the pizza here already? "Chloe?" I asked in surprise when I opened the door. She stood there with her hair slightly damp and frizzled from the rain. "Look, I'm not here to stay. I'm here against the advice of my pastor." "Okay. Could you please not stay overnight here?" I gave her an incredulous look. "You came all the way here to ask us not to stay overnight?" "Yes," she said, sounding flustered. I really like you, and I know you don't like me, and that you never really will like me, but I don't want to see you get hurt." Honestly, did not know how to respond to this sudden confession of affection, but she was right. I did not find Chloe attractive at all. Whoa. Just calm down a bit, hey? It's just a house, right? I don't believe in Alicia's stuff, and neither do you. It's going to be a boring night, and by tomorrow morning, it'll be something to laugh about. Chloe nodded glumly. "Please?" I actually considered it for a moment, but then remembered purple-haired girl's phone number was on the line too. "Nah, I'm good. I'll be praying for you," Chloe said. Then she hurriedly took off in the rain as fast as her legs could take her back to her car. The rain was heavy now. I could only just make out the silhouette of her car at the main road and the beams of her headlights as they came on. They drove off into the night. 2 knocks sounded from the wood overhead. I sighed irritably. I was letting the house get to me, but it sounded like I should not have let Chloe drive away. Still, what was I going to do? As Chloe's car drove off, a motorcycle came to take her place. It was the pizza delivery guy. Raj, Jordan, and myself sat around the living room eating pizza. I shared a 6-pack that I had brought with us too. Raj explained the setup they had. The main attraction of the house was the shadow girl who lived in the basement. They had set up cameras in the kitchen, trained on the door, both night vision and infrared. There were 3 other cameras, too, one viewing the kitchen from another angle, another viewing the hall from the front door, and one panning the exterior of the house. They asked me if I was cool being in the footage while I slept, and I told them I didn't mind. After the pizza, Raj and Jordan decided to go back up to their room to view the cameras. I decided I did not want to be a third wheel and just stay downstairs. They left, and very quickly, the boredom set in. I was scrolling through my phone and social media for about an hour on the sofa when I heard a double knock. I jumped out of my chair in surprise. There in the window was a face with white teeth, laughing in a strange mechanical way. Leash? What the hell? Rain had drenched her hair, and while I couldn't see much of her through the black pane, the skin on her face gleamed from the inside light. Enjoying yourself? Yeah, do you want to come inside? Oh, yes, we would love to. Could you open the door for us? We? Chloe's face popped up into view. She looked unwell, and her head was at an angle. Her wet hair was strewn limply across her face. Met her on the way here, Alicia explained. Car trouble. Chloe's face made odd, jerky movements as if to nod. Let us in. Then, both their heads slid out of view towards the front door. I stood up and got to the door, but no sooner had I put my hand on the handle than 2 loud knocks sounded from inside the house. I turned my head, looking for where the sound had come from. 2 for no. There was a screaming and commotion upstairs. I turned around to see Raj and Jordan tearing down the stairs. They jumped on me and dragged me back up the stairs. I was yelling, too shocked to put up much resistance. They threw me into the guest room and slammed the door shut and locked it. What the hell, guys? Alicia and Chloe are out there. Jordan looked at me. His face was ashen gray and his eyes were wide. Raj stood by his side, hands on his knees as he panted. That wasn't Chloe or Alicia, Raj said between breaths. What? They looked like worms, Jordan stammered. The hell are you guys talking about? Giant worms with human faces. Alicia and Chloe's faces, and one more. I saw them on the camera. I frowned, trying to understand. A single knock sounded from somewhere in the room. One for yes. Yes, there was a giant worm with human faces trying to get in. Yes, I'm seriously entertaining the notion that a ghost is communicating with me through knocks on wood. All right, I said, standing up laughing. Didn't think you guys would be all too serious to get together and try to pull such a prank on me, but you're going to have to do a lot better than human-faced worms to make me believe in the supernatural. Just at that moment, there was a flash of lightning, and the lights went out. I could hear Jordan cursing away in the darkness. A couple of moments later, he had switched on a flashlight. It darted over to me, then over to Raj. Raj was staring at his laptop screen. I flipped the light switch behind me up and down, but nothing happened. Then I realized the laptop was still working because it was on battery power. Apparently the rest of the cameras were too. Raj was pointing at something on screen to Jordan. Reluctantly, I went over to have a look. The basement door was now wide open. The night vision cameras showed nothing but an old dusty staircase leading downwards into the gloom. But something started happening on the infrared camera. A cold spot was rising up from the stairs. The blob took on a somewhat humanoid shape. A little girl, maybe? Then it moved off camera. We all stared at the camera that was looking into the kitchen from another angle. That's where the shape would have moved into from the first camera. It wasn't infrared, so we couldn't tell where the cold spot was. The kitchen simply appeared to be empty. There was nothing. Lightning flared up through the windows. I was expecting to see Alicia and Chloe's heads against the window panes, but the window was black. Then slowly, the cupboard beneath the sink opened up all by itself. Despite the insanity of the situation, I couldn't help the thought crossing my mind that the cupboard could have been opened by someone with a string somewhere off camera. This must have been a prank cooked up by Alicia, but how had she gotten the other three roped into this? Particularly Chloe. I knew that was going to be a hard sell in of itself. "Hey, boys," a metallic rasp came from the window. We all turned to find Alicia staring at us through the window. "Aren't you going to let me in?" Jordan gave a whimper. Raj just stood with his mouth agape, and I felt somewhere in me take over. "Alicia," I heard my voice, "get down from there at once. You're on the second floor. It's raining. You're going to slip and get hurt." Alicia just laughed and laughed, her head thrown back. Chloe's face also came into view a little lower and to the right of Alicia. It had a stupid look to it, and her laughter was more of a weird gurgle. A third face suddenly slammed itself into the window pane right beside Alicia's. It was the pizza delivery guy. Another smash against the window, and there was a crack in the glass. The delivery guy's nose appeared to be bleeding and broken. There was a flash of lightning, and the three people outside were silhouetted by it. They weren't human faces on worms. They were heads on fingers, connected to a hand as large as a tree. And then they were gone in a flash of lightning. Raj and Jordan were both crying now, unmoving. I was blinking like an owl, trying to understand what I'd just seen. We gotta get out of here," I heard Jordan say weakly. I turned to look at him. He looked like a blubbering mess. We gotta go," he roared, grabbing Raj by the shoulder. She said we could just leave, right? Let's get out of here. I don't know what the hell that thing is or where it was doing, but I'm not staying here another minute." I tried to intervene, but Jordan had kicked open the door and dragged Raj out through it. I groaned and had the sense to grab a torch, following the two into the dark corridors. Well, this was more exciting than the other ghost expedition, at least. I really would have to get Alicia to tell me how she was achieving all these special effects. We all stumbled onto the landing, and I swung the torch around and back and forth. I was about to lead us all down the stairs when two knocks came from overhead. I paused for a moment. The night air was cold and clammy, but the air from the stairs was freezing. I shone the torch down the stairs, and long shadows darted everywhere. Dust motes floated serenely in the light, ignorant of the storm outside. But although I couldn't see anything, I could feel something. Something was waiting there in the darkness, daring us to trespass in its territory. Jordan gasped, "What? We need to get out of here." But he didn't get any closer to the stairs either. This was the moment of truth. Did I believe in ghosts or not? I decided not to venture down the stairs. I'm not sure why, but I didn't go into the bathroom either. Instead, I decided to try the master bedroom. I tried the handle and was surprised to find it unlocked. It was bare. There was no bed, no furniture of any kind, and the closet was empty. A thin layer of dust lay across the carpet. The windows had their curtains drawn. There was a lock on the door, but it could only be locked from the inside. Raj and Jordan shambled in after me like the Walking Dead. Jordan stared blankly at the stairs as the door shut. Raj sank to the floor against the wall. Jordan took his place beside him. This room felt strangely safe. Maybe Ella didn't want this part of the house to be involved in the ruse. But why not? There really wasn't a thing in here. On the rear wall was a door to the ensuite bathroom. Slowly I made my way over and peered in. The flashlight beam was reflected back at me by a mirror spanning the length of the wall. Suddenly, it wasn't just the flashlight that was bright. There was light coming from the mirror. In the mirror, where there should have been the reflection of me looking back at the open door, instead was the reflection of a door that was partially closed, and a hand had come through the door and flicked the bathroom light on. The mirror door opened, and there stood a skinny, bespectacled fellow where I should have been. He held up a hand as if to say he meant no harm, then dragged a stool into the reflection of the bathroom and sat on it. A knock sounded over my head. What's going on? I heard Raj say from behind me. All three of us gathered in the bathroom, giving audience to the mirror. Hey, the guy said solemnly. This is some kind of trick. Is this a screen or two-way mirror? I asked, touching the glass surface. The guy in the mirror shook his head. Sorry, it's not. My name's Josh, and this is going to sound insane, but I need to start by saying I'm sorry. I didn't know it would turn out this way. Raj came closer. Are you in the mirror? Josh grimaced. Guess so. I'm Josh from a mirror world. I don't know what happened to the Josh in your world. I don't think I want to know either. I don't understand, I said. The skinny dude gave a sigh and adjusted his glasses. You've ran into the hand. Raj, Jordan, and I looked at each other. Big hand with the heads of our friends' faces on its fingers? Raj said. Josh nodded grimly. You guys seen the basement thing yet? Yeah, just now. Okay then, listen to me very carefully. The hand can't get into the house unless it's invited in. I don't know why, it just doesn't. I don't know what it is, I don't know who or where it comes from, but every new moon, it hunts anyone who comes into this place. As long as no one invites it in, you're safe. But if someone invites it in, you need to find the tunnel. The tunnel? I asked. Yes, the tunnel. The basement thing. Did you see if she interacted with anything? Yeah, the kitchen sink drawer, Jordan said. Josh winced. That'd be right. If you look there, you'll find a black tunnel. It's the only safe place from the hand if it gets in the house. If you go into that tunnel, only go as far as you need for safety. Don't explore it. Wait to hear a knock from the house. Usually sounds like someone rapping on wood. Only come out if you hear a knock. One knock, not two. Why can't we just drive off? Jordan asked. The girl we met here said we could just leave. Josh gained an angry look. Don't trust anything she told you. Anyone who comes into this house on a new moon is marked. The hand will hunt you wherever you go. How do you know all this? Raj asked. Again, sorry. I was caught in a bad place. I made a deal with the devil, maybe the devil, in exchange for my life. Took his book and passed it to the mirror demon. She's the purple-haired girl you met. I didn't know it would release her from your world. The lights in the mirror flickered. I don't have much time. Don't invite the hand in. Go into the tunnel if you need to, but don't explore it. The devil waits inside. Wait for the knock. And please, if you find the book, burn it. I'm so sorry. Then the mirror went dark, and the three of us were staring at our own reflections. My incredulity kicked in, and I turned to Raj and Jordan. Look, I don't know if you guys are in on this whole thing. My guess is that you must be. That is some really cool makeup and special effects you guys needed to pour into making that hand thing. Those film studies courses at uni are really paying off, I guess. But all we gotta do is not invite the freaky hand puppet thing in till morning, right? Raj and Jordan looked at each other. Do you still think this is a prank? Raj sputtered. Sorry, dude, I don't believe in ghosts. Raj looked as if he was about to hit me when Jordan shushed both of us. He indicated that we should listen. There, past the sound of the rain, I could hear a car engine. Someone had come to the house. Cautiously, Jordan opened the bedroom door. It was still dark outside in the landing area, but the chilly air from the stairs was no longer present. The three of us tiptoed out. By the light of the torch, made our way downstairs, just as the front door opened. Hey, boys, came the voice from a silhouette in the doorframe. Ella? I asked. Told you about not entering my room, didn't I? I couldn't make out her features in the dark, but we could see her waggling her fingers at us. Oh, well, you break one rule, I break one rule. Oh, handy, Ella called out into the night. There was an odd shuffling noise, and a disturbing shadow approached the doorframe. "Come on in!" A long, tubular shape, with long hair attached to it, jutted from around the doorframe and looked at us. Ella stepped inside with a welcoming wave. The other finger joined it. Chloe's face was upon the thumb, Alicia's on the index finger, and the delivery guy was on the middle. It was truly a surreal sight watching the giant gray hand reach in through the door, a vacant face of its first 3 fingers, smiling eagerly and hungrily. I had the wind knocked out of me as Raj pushed me into the kitchen. Raj, Jordan, and I turned into a jumble of limbs hurtling towards the kitchen sink. I got shoved into a small black hole in the undersink. Raj was in too, practically on top of me. We both wiggled further in, and I couldn't tell if Jordan was in because Raj was in the way. But there was this awful shriek and scuffle and a sudden whump with a heavy curtain closing, and everything went dark after that. Raj was screaming incoherently and kicking furiously against a wall. It dawned on me that there were only 2 of us in the tunnel, and Raj was kicking a wall where the entrance had been. He kept screaming Jordan's name over and over for a good few minutes. Further in, the tunnel increased in height, letting me half stand. I sat on the floor, feet pressed against the opposing wall, heedless of Raj's agony. I felt sick and exhausted. I think I fainted for a minute. When I came to, I was alone in the dark. I called out for Raj, but I got no response. On my hands and knees, I started feeling my way around. By feeling the wall, I made a guess as to which one the entrance had been. It was still solid. Then, I slowly felt my way down the passage. The tunnel ceiling was never high enough for me to stand up straight, so I found myself crawling most of the time. I kept thinking I would bump my head against something. It was pitch black, and it was all I could do not to piss myself. I didn't recall being afraid of the dark. I guessed my genetic primordial memories were kicking in as much as my rational mind was telling itself that there was a good explanation for everything that was happening tonight. What was this place? We had entered the walls of the house, right? Had we gone under the house? I hadn't noted any elevators or changes in elevation, but that was the only thing that could have made sense. Otherwise, I should be on the outside of the house. Somewhere along the corridor, I felt a strange lump of dusty fabric that I instinctively recoiled from. Then I saw a faint light and recognized the torch. It must be Raj. I shuffled down the tunnel faster and entered a hall. First thing that hit me was the smell of excrement. The torchlight was cast upon an empty wooden chair. It looked ornate with a high back. There was a nasty black stain on it, as if something had rotted there. The stain glistened like slime. There was a distinct footprint in the dust upon the ground that led to an opening on the opposite side of the room. Raj was kneeling before the empty chair, prostrate and naked. He had soiled himself and was mumbling incoherently. Slowly I approached and picked up the torch beside him. I didn't know why, but I didn't say a word. My brain had finally gone numb trying to understand things and was oddly quiet for once. I jabbed Raj under an armpit and somehow managed to drag him back into the tunnel. We passed by a disturbing lump of cloth. I must have touched it earlier. Struggling with his weight and trying to hold on to the torch, I incredibly made it back to where we had started. That's where I dropped him on the floor and sat myself back down, trying to catch my breath. The stink of excrement was unbearable, but I did not want to go any closer to the hall with the chair in it. I turned off the light to conserve the battery. I don't know how long we waited there in the dark. It could have been minutes, could have been hours, but suddenly I became aware of the opening in the wall again. I could just make out the kitchen. There was orange sunlight coming in through the windows as they lit up. I could hear birdsong coming from a distance, and the cherry wood furniture was warm and welcoming. "Morning," I heard Raj gasp. He got to his knees and started to stiffly crawl for the exit. "Morning. We're safe, I sputtered, starting to cry. That's when I heard 2 knocks on the wood. I was going to grab Raj by the heels, but I was too late. A giant gray finger with Jordan's head on it had reached down into view. Its mouth was open, impossibly wide, and it clamped down on Raj's neck with a sickening crunch. Screaming, Raj was dragged out of the tunnel and up out of view. There was a horrid sound of pulpy fruit being squashed. Then nothing. I stared at the tunnel's entrance for a long time, barely daring to breathe. When I made the slightest movement towards it, I heard 2 sharp taps and froze in place. A bizarre shadow blotted out the sunlight in the kitchen, and very slowly, 5 faces lowered into view, upside down. Raj's face was on the pinky, eyes rolling and tongue lolling out. The other faces looked at me with insane stares and wide smiles. Alicia spoke. Seems that we've covered all 5 fingers. Lucky you. Then they withdrew like snakes, and the hand must have slithered out. The morning returned to the kitchen eventually, and I could hear birdsong again. I didn't move till I heard a single knock from somewhere in the house. Gingerly I got out of the tunnel, and when I looked back, it was gone. The house appeared orderly and empty. I walked silently to the living room, where my overnight bag sat on the couch as if nothing had happened. I grabbed it and exited the front room. I was just about to reach my car when I heard slow clapping from behind me. Ella was standing in the open door of her garage, smiling sweetly. "Andy, you made it," she said, in a girlish voice. I backed up against my car, my skin covered in goosebumps. She came in close enough for me to realize she smelled like unscented wax. She pressed a piece of paper to my chest. "My number, just as I promised." Yeah, thanks," I mumbled. Then, pathetically, I scrambled into my car, taking in a deep, sobering breath, and sped off. Ella watched me go, hands on her hips and still smiling. I've been trying to tell myself it's all been some sort of nightmare, a hallucination. I've pored over the scene again and again, but many defy any explanation. I haven't seen the others all week at college. I haven't dared go to the police. I haven't dared to tell anyone. I keep telling myself that it was a very, very elaborate prank, and they'd show up one evening laughing. I'd laugh too and tell them it had been a good one. But they haven't turned up. Instead, I just got a text this evening. It was from Ella. I didn't save her number, but I just knew it was from her. It read, "Your friends say they got rid of the pizza guy's head, so there's room for you now. They say the Midnight Minutes have been summoned." There's a soft thumping from the windows, and I don't dare turn around to see what it is.